What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I'm bringing to you a video on how to beat Trickstar. We started off the week with an introduction to Trickstar, showing and explaining each of the individual Trickstar cards in depth, and then from there we moved on to the Trickstar combo tutorial, showing how these cards synergize together and showing off some really cool combos you can use to blow out your opponent. Then yesterday we uploaded the Trickstar deck profile, giving you guys a little bit of a template for if you're wanting to start the basis of a Trickstar deck, just an example for what you can use and modify from there. So today we're going to be wrapping up the mini Trickstar guide with how to beat Trickstar. But before we get into that, I do want to give a big shout out to my newest patrons as always, because there is a lot of them. So big shout outs to Eric, Murphy, Carlos, Matt, Sean, Dylan, and Chad. And if you guys want to help support me and the channel through Patreon, check out the link in the description below. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So Trickstar is a really interesting deck because there's a lot to it, but at the same time it is rather simple in its application on how you need to approach the deck in terms of what you're wanting to do to defeat it. One of the biggest things that you can use in your favor against the Trickstar matchup is hand traps. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, oh, here we go, hand trap format, but there are a couple hand traps in here that are very, very cheap and effective against Trickstar. And what if I told you the best hand trap you can use, you can actually acquire for under 50 cents a copy? So we're going to start off with the big one, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This really should come as no surprise because Ash Blossom is pretty much just ubiquitous at this point in terms of its application against any meta deck, or really any deck for that matter. Ash Blossom's really good because the deck does do a lot of searching, so Ash Blossom can just completely shut down any of those effects, especially in a simplified game state where you can just completely take over by denying them the opportunity to search. But one of the biggest applications for Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is the fact that it can negate Trickstar Reincarnation. Now, this is what you primarily want to save your Ash Blossom for. Sure, your opponent's going to have cards like Trickstar Light Stage, Trickstar Candina, all these cards that are going to search one another out of the deck, but even if you hit one of them with Ash Blossom, chances are they're going to have another one to continue with their combo anyway, because statistically speaking, they have 9 ways to get to Candina, and you only have 3 copies of Ash Blossom, not to mention that Ash Blossom can only be used once per turn. So, what's the best way to use Ash Blossom other than the card that's going to absolutely disrupt your entire hand in Trickstar Reincarnation? By saving the Ash Blossom for Trickstar Reincarnation, not only are you preserving the cards in your hand, but you're also denying your opponent the opportunity to hit you with the Draw and Lock Trickstar Reincarnation combo, which is essentially one of the deck's few win conditions. So just being conservative and holding that Ash Blossom is very, very key. Now, speaking of Draw and Lockbird, Draw and Lockbird actually works rather well against Trickstars as well, even though it's a card that's very well known for being played in the deck itself. Since the deck does so much searching, Draw and Lock can essentially deny them any further searches, especially if they start off with something like Light Stage or Terraforming. That's going to put you in a really good position because that means they're not even going to get to the Trickstar Reincarnation if they didn't already have it in their opening hand from that point. So if you do happen to have Draw and Lockbird, that is also something that's not only good against other meta decks as well, but it happens to coincide with Trickstars in that same fashion. Another really good hand trap is DD Crow. Now, I know DD Crow doesn't really see too much play, but DD Crow is very powerful for a couple reasons. First off, you're able to banish an opposing Trickstar Reincarnation out of their graveyard, because by doing so, your opponent is not going to be able to special summon their Trickstar monsters. Let's say if you're going in for an OTK, people use Trickstar Reincarnation to essentially protect themselves so that they don't get absolutely blown out if the rest of their field gets destroyed. So DD Crow is good for being able to just completely remove the card from the graveyard in general and allows you to just not have to deal with it at all. Now, moving on to some more unorthodox hand traps, Psyframe Gear Epsilon is a card that started seeing a little bit of play after YCS Prague about a month ago. Now, Psyframe Gear Epsilon has dual purpose here because if your deck is already playing something like Psyframe Gear Gamma, you're already playing the driver in your main deck, so that means that playing Psyframe Gear Epsilon is a rather natural inclusion because you're not having to waste an extra side deck slot for something like the driver. Now, where the application is here, again, is Trickstar Reincarnation. If your opponent has Trickstar Reincarnation and they flip it on you, you can chain your Psyframe Gear Epsilon in response, meaning that not only is Trickstar Reincarnation going to be negated, but you're also going to be able to get a free Psyframe Lord Omega in the process. So that's a very good way to not only handle the reincarnation, but also to put yourself way ahead in that current game. And now for my favorite hand trap against Trickstar, and this card is incredibly cheap, so if you're looking for a really good option, I would highly recommend it. Chaos Hunter. Now, Chaos Hunter is a card that we haven't seen in a rather long time, but essentially when your opponent special summons a monster, you discard a card and special summon Chaos Hunter from the hand. And the last part about Chaos Hunter is very important. Your opponent cannot banish cards. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, that means that your opponent cannot use Trickstar Reincarnation to banish your entire hand, meaning that what's going to happen is your opponent is typically going to search the Trickstar Reincarnation when they go first, and what they're going to do is they're going to tag out their face-up Candina for a copy of Licorice that's already in their hand, maybe multiple Licorices, we don't know. But in the instance that they do tag out, you're able to special summon Chaos Hunter to the field. Now, what does this mean? Well, this is important because now that you have Chaos Hunter on the field, your opponent has no opportunity to activate Trickstar Reincarnation because since they just set it that turn, they're not going to be able to flip it up to banish your hand, and that's going to put you in a very safe position. Not to mention that Chaos Hunter has a 2400 body, which can be rather difficult for Trickstar to deal with. Trickstar has a little bit of a problem dealing with larger monsters unless they play some cards like Honest or maybe stuff like Kaijus to get over stuff like that. But that's essentially going to give you a free turn to not only beat over your opponent's monsters with the Chaos Hunter, but meaning that they're not going to be able to hit you with that Trickstar Reincarnation, which also doubles against the Droll combo as well. This is really big too because it means they can't banish the Trickstar Reincarnation that's already in their graveyard from the graveyard to special summon something back, meaning that they're not going to be able to protect themselves if you might be able to OTK them. And also it hedges against cards like Eater of Millions, because Eater of Millions requires the player to banish cards from their extra deck in order to special summon it. So one of their biggest ways to out problematic monsters becomes completely useless when Chaos Hunter hits the field. This is a really cool card overall, and I'd highly recommend it because it's a card that can absolutely win the matchup in the right circumstances. Now, what other methods are there to battle and combat Trickstar? Well, one other very effective tactic is using quick play back row removal. Now, this should be obvious. You got cards like Twin Twister, Cosmic Cyclone, but each of these are good for their own reasons. Cosmic Cyclone's a little bit iffy because you're having to pay 1,000 life points to use it, which basically puts Trickstar that much closer to its win condition since it is a burn deck. But the advantage of using Cosmic Cyclone is the fact that if you hit a Trickstar Reincarnation with it, not only is it going to be banished, but they're not going to be able to use it from the graveyard in a later turn to protect themselves or to revive something back to continue on with some of their plays, so that's very important. But Twin Twister is probably a better option here for a couple of reasons. First off, it doesn't cost life points, which is always a good thing, but second off, the fact that you can hit 2 back row is also very important. That means you can also hit something like the Light Stage, you can hit something like an additional back row, maybe they have 2 copies of Trickstar Reincarnation in the back row or something like that, but you're also able to use these quick play spells during your opponent's end phase when they set the Reincarnation or when they set any of their other back row, like Scapegoat for instance, meaning that they're not going to be able to activate them since it is the end phase of the card that they just set, and they're not going to be able to use it, which renders the Scapegoat useless, and the fact that they're not going to be able to have those 4 free link materials on their following turn. That's one of the best ways to deal with Scapegoat, is the fact that if you have the back row removal to deal with it, then you're going to put yourself in a really, really good position. Now, there are other couple methods as well to deal with Trickstar depending on the type of deck that you're playing. One of the biggest things is when in doubt, flood them out, and floodgates are also particularly effective against Trickstar as well. Cards like Anti-Spell Fragrance. I mean, there's so many spell cards in this deck that affect Trickstar's consistency. Cards like Trickstar Light Stage, you have Terraforming, Pot of Desires, all these things that if you have a card like Anti-Spell Fragrance, it can actually very much so hinder their ability to combo off and and establish a decent board, because you're able to establish that anti-spell fragrance and deny them the ability to do so, meaning on your turn, you can disrupt any of their plays and go on and proceed to win the match from there. There's also cards like Skill Drain, which completely deny the opponent being able to burn you because it just negates all effects of monsters on the field. You also have stuff like Mistake. Mistake is also very good because Trickstar does in fact do a lot of searching, which is why Droll and Lockbird is good, so you can pretty much just shut down the searching altogether, and that's also why a card like Thunder King Ryo in a stun deck might also be a very good option for you to use as well. Not only is it preventing you from, or your opponent rather, from doing a ton of searching, but that 1900 body can actually be rather annoying for Trickstar to deal with. So these are all some rather effective tools. Couple other cards I want to quickly mention. Mind Crush is a particularly effective card as well because you can activate it when your opponent searches Trickstar Reincarnation to immediately just have it be sent to the graveyard. Sure, you might have to deal with its banish effect, but your hand isn't going to be disrupted by Trickstar Reincarnation, and if they have multiple Trickstar Reincarnations, all of them are going to be sent to the graveyard, so you won't have to worry about any of them for the following turn. There's also cards like Board Wipes, Regeki, Dark Hole. These are good because if your opponent has something like Double Licorice established and they're burning you for like 800 damage every single time, you're able to just clear the field, reset, and you're able to establish your board from there. The last couple cards I want to mention are just anti-burn cards in general. These are my least favorite options, but depending on the type of deck that you're playing, they actually might be what you need. A card like Perform H Trapeze Magician, which in my opinion every single Pendulum Magician deck should be running at least at one, can almost be an auto win for your Trickstar matchup because as long as it's on the field, you're not going to be taking any burn damage whatsoever, which essentially nullifies the entire deck's win condition as a whole. And the fact that it has a pretty decent body means that your opponent isn't going to really have an easy time getting over it. There's also a card like Prime Material Dragon, which we've seen when burn becomes semi-relevant. We haven't seen this card in ages, but it's interesting for a couple reasons. First off, a lot of decks are very much capable of special summoning just at least one monster onto the field, so you're able to tribute that for the 6-star Prime Material Dragon. It's got 2400 attack, which can be rather annoying for your opponent to deal with, and in addition to that, if it would be destroyed, you're able to discard a card and negate cards that would destroy it, like Board Wipes. So that's a really interesting option. They are able to out it with a card like Eater of Millions, but at that point, they're having their 3 copies of Eater of Millions to your 3 side deck copies of Prime Material Dragon if you're going that far. So pretty much it's a matter of, are they going to get their unsearchable card quicker than you're going to get your unsearchable card? So it's a bit iffy, but it can work under the right circumstances. We've seen it work in the past, and that's why I wanted to mention it in this video. There's also some other cards like Hanewada, which saw a little bit of side deck play when Trickstar was first released, as well as DDD Rebel King Leonidas. This is also an okay option, but I wouldn't really highly recommend it. So overall, those are all the tools that you can use to combat Trickstar. There's a lot of them, and essentially once you start understanding the matchup more, realizing which cards are important to hit and which ones your deck is much easily capable of dealing with, then that's going to put you in a perfect position to easily breeze through the matchup. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about any cards you like to see and use in the Trickstar matchup. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.